Welcome to Coffee with Joe for January 6th, 2011. Happy New Year, Joe.
Yeah, Pete, 2011. Here we go.
Here we go.
Salute.
Joe, we want to continue with a conversation we started at the end of last year.
Yeah.
The NEED Act. This is the act that Dennis Kucinich is submitting to Congress. Let's see, National Emergency Employment Defense HR 6550. I just want to take a minute to alert people to a very interesting conversation we're having on our blog, economicstability.org, under the Champagne with Joe December 21st, 2010, where we first started talking about the NEED Act. We were toasting the NEED Act, and there's an Austrian economist named Kaj Grusner who's come on there and is taking us to task for just about everything that we say.
I think it's important, that we have these discussions with everybody out there that believes either in the present system or, the chartalists or the Austrians or whomever, that we need to talk about what our differences are so that we're prepared when we get to the Monetary Commission stage. The Act abolishes fractional reserve banking. So it abolishes creating money as credit by private bankers. Well, that would end. And the Act establishes a full reserve basis for all banking and all lending. And so therefore, what we have done is provided stability back into the system of credits and loans. Okay, all money would be, there's a process by which the existing money would be transformed, if you will, into United States money, which is what they're calling it. So then at that point right there, you have, however measured, a United States money base. And then there is the matter of how to create on an annual basis the money that is needed in order to maintain price stability, general price stability. We call it general price stability, and economists, Pete, call it general price stability. But what it really represents is the stable buying power of the currency, okay? That is to say that a dollar today is going to be worth $1 a year from now, is going to be worth $1 2 years from now, going to be worth the same. So in order to do that, we have to have money created along with economic growth. If there's economic growth, however we measure it, and again, that's a whole nother issue, Pete, it's going to have to be created. And then how do we determine how much money is going to be created? And how is it created? The first part of that, the authority for that resides with the Monetary Authority, the National Monetary Authority, as outlined in the Act. And that's really, a significant event, in and of itself, structurally, to have the authority rest within an independent, autonomous body within the government that could be accountable. And then there's, the standard. When we talk, you and I have talked in the past, Pete, about the 1939 program, and in the 1939 program, the intention of drawing it up was to end the lawless variability in the supply of the national circulating media, okay, the money, the lawless variability of it. That lawless variability, there's two aspects of it. There's the lawlessness, and that's taken care of right here in the Monetary Authority. Now we're going to have a legal authority. And then the variability. The variability, it's a coming and going, Pete. It's an expansion and contraction of money. So we're going to take that away in order to have economic stability and have that authority rest with the Monetary Authority. If I could, Pete, I think it's really important because some people, a lot of people say, well, how do we know they're going to say the right amount? Remember, they don't create the money, Pete. The money is actually created during the budgeting process of the government. Okay, so we should talk about that too. But if I could, Pete, I'd like to read this section, the governing principle of monetary policy, taken from the NEED Act of 2010. The monetary authority shall pursue, a monetary policy based on the governing principle that the supply of money in circulation should not become inflationary nor deflationary in and of itself, but will be sufficient to allow goods and services to move freely in trade in a balanced manner. The monetary authority shall maintain long-run growth of the monetary and credit aggregates commensurate with the economy's long-run potential to increase production, so as to promote effectively the goals of maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. Now, Pete, the reason that that's worth mentioning is because you have there a guiding principle for determining the monetary policy, therefore to determine the increase in the money supply. And that's the principle, to me, that ought to be measured against any other system, that we're going to look at in terms of how's it going to function. Because to me, if it doesn't have that kind of a policy guidance, in law, Pete, ending that lawlessness, then what is it? Then what will it be? So that's how they go about doing it. And what are they doing there? They're determining the annual amount of increase in that amount of circulating medium, Pete. That amount of increase is supposed to match the increase in the gross GDP. That's the measure that we're using now.
So 2% increase in the GDP, 2% increase in the money supply.
Yes. 2% increase in GDP is 2%. And that translates into a dollar amount, Pete.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's say it was $200 billion. We might as well talk that through because there's a mechanism. That $200 billion becomes the balance in the revenue side of the budget that is filled by the government paying it into existence. And it's identified there. So the budgetary, this is, I think, a key point here, Pete. The budgetary amount is going to be whatever, the government, acting on behalf of the people determines it's going to be. Same as now, okay? The difference is that the amount that comes from taxation is going to be determined by taking those expenses and backing out the amount that's going to be created through money creation. And what you have that at the end of that year, you have enabled the potential GDP to be achieved and done it without inflation or deflation. So there it is. I mean, that's the mechanism by which the monetary authority would act. I mean, there's all the provisions are in the act for how they're, how they act and how they're appointed and how they're, and all of that stuff. But that's really the important thing is that they have policy guidance that's set in law that says it to be neither inflationary nor deflationary. And then they're accountable, Pete. That's the good part. Then they're accountable because if they do it right, there should be zero inflation, But they won't do it right, Pete. There's this always thing about, well, forecasts are, if anything, are always wrong, So the question becomes, how far off will they be? How far off will they be? And then figure out why, It means that one of the metrics they used in determining the amount of money creation, Pete, has to be lesser valued or lesser weighted in terms of, determining it. So I think that that's a significant thing, Pete, having an accountable, monetary authority that people can look at and see what they're doing and how they're doing it and how it's working. That to me is a tremendous advantage over the system that we have now or any other system that I know of.
So that's the main backstop against the fear that this money power would be overused by the government. And government would overcreate money and start hyperinflation off. The most common criticism of a greenback money system, right? Wouldn't you say?
I would say absolutely it is, and it's a valid one. I mean, it's a valid concern. Absolutely, it's a valid concern. But if you really think about it, in terms of, well, we elect the Congress and they set the budget, and that's what they do now, and that's all going to be there. I'm going to say regardless of whether that amount is 200 billion, Pete, or 100 billion or 300 billion, because now we still do that, only we fund it through debt, through the government now turning around and issuing debt on which people have to pay interest on that debt, and that debt is perennial, Pete. The increase in the debt from the deficits stays. We don't pay it back.
We never pay
it just
down
keeps,
the principal.
It just keeps going on. So we're going to eliminate that, and that's why Dr. Yamaguchi's work is so important, because it shows how we can eliminate government debt through the issuance power of debt-free money by the government.
Joe, back on the 22nd of November 2009, we did a Coffee with Joe called "You Can't Trust the Government." You and I don't have much faith in the government at this point. Why would you want to give them more power by handing them the money power?
We agree that the government is corrupt. It's corruptible. And part of it's corruptible by the systems that we have in place. And one of those systems is the money system. So we need to have a new system that would enable the government. Fixing the money system doesn't fix the government, Pete. We have to fix the government too. That's for sure.
All right. To be continued.
All right, Pete.